Hey, how you doing? This is John, and welcome to John's Long Box. Today we're looking at Advanced Dungeons & Dragons issue number 2. This is by DC Comics and TSR. So this was a DC took a TSR licensed property of Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, and they also used the drag. I think it was Dragonlance system. Forgive me if I'm wrong. I bought a lot of these modules as a kid, or these package settings, but I just kind of like data mined them for stuff that I wanted to use. I preferred to use my own homebrewed stuff, but with a liberal heavy handing of swiping from other worlds to pepper my stuff. Whatever. I was a kid. So why did I get back into this? Because I just did that Jonah Hex spectacular with Jonah Hex dies and becomes a stuffed creature for the circus, and I was like, I want to go back and read anything by Michael Fleischer, because I was really impressed by that story. And I was like, wait a minute, I got this right over here on my spinning rack. So I'm rereading this. I read these when they first came out, and I really know nothing about them. I remembered nothing about them until I reread them. I did a showcase on number 1, one of my earlier showcases, so you could go back and check out number 1. Now I'm doing number 2. Art by Jan Duursema. For some reason, I called him one of my favorite colorists when he's not one of our... Oh, here, I don't know if it's a man or a woman with the name Jan. So there you go. But look at this cover. Old school coloring. The sunset over here, and we got the character. We got a centaur and a dwarf fighting the undead. Okay. So this. Oh, let's talk about this for a second. This is the new format, and we got January 1989. This is the new format. This was DC experimenting. Remember, rising tide floats all boats, and DC and Marvel were both at the top of their game, so they were able to try different things. So this was a weird period in comic book history. For those of you who weren't there, there was the newsstand. The newsstand was you bought comic books at 7-Eleven, at candy stores, at stationery stores. Probably 7-Eleven is all that's left. But you would go in and there'd be like a Hey Kids spinner rack. You see, I bought one over there. Okay. And what that was you'd find the comic books there. And it was always a mismatch is that even a word? A hodgepodge of comics. Marvel, DC, Charlton, Atlas at the time, and Archie's. They were everywhere. And the store didn't order them. They were just... Distributors would just bring them in, stack in that thing, and it was very hands off as far as the store was concerned. Then comic book stores started opening. That was called the direct market, and the direct market was Marvel and DC would sell. They called it direct market, but now that I'm saying it out loud, it's kind of a term that doesn't really work, because what it was Marvel and DC would sell to Diamond Distributing, and then Diamond would sell to the comic book stores. So, it's not really direct market. All right, well, whatever. Light bulb just went off, an epiphany. So Diamond would then sell to comic book stores. So the comic book store that I was working at this time was called The Incredible Pulp. It was in Baldwin, Long Island. And we would order. 20 Dungeons & Dragons, 50 Fantastic Fours, 97 X-Men, or whatever. And we bought them and we kept them. Now, the newsstands were able to return the comic books for store credit. So, unless they were stolen, it was, I don't know. I think they laid out the initial investment, and then, they kept the profits, and then only bought new comics, when things sold through. Because if it didn't sell through, the distributor would give you a credit. So, you bought a comic that didn't sell, you returned it, you got another comic. So eventually it would sell through. So it was considered low risk, but at the same time, it was low profit, because comic books weren't really making that much money for the store. So that's why Marvel, I'm getting into a whole bunch of things, but that's why Marvel experimented with the magazines, because a lot of stores were saying, hey, listen, for the quarter that I make on a comic book, I could put a magazine in that spot and make $1. So Marvel made magazines to compete directly with magazines. There you go. You got a whole lesson of. So this was a weird period. This was the beginning of the direct market, and the kind of fading out of the comic book of newsstands, which I thought was a shame, because that's where newsstands got kids. Comic books was like an impulse buy, but what do I know? So anyway, this was the new format. This was an experiment, and it kind of became like the norm now that I think about it. But the new format was, it was a little bit more expensive. So I think comic books were like 75 cents or $1, and these were $1.25, and it was better quality paper and better quality, I think, coloring or printing in general. And so that's what this is. And then this became the norm. So this used to have the UPS or UPC symbol. I keep saying UPS. The UPC symbol for newsstands, but in the direct market, they just used it for like little house ads. Later on, they put it back. I think, I forget the exact year. Okay, 5 minutes of rambling. So here's the publisher, a note from Jeanette Kahn. Jeanette Kahn, I always say, is one of the most powerful people in comic books that you've never heard of. She was running DC Comics. She was the Stan Lee of DC Comics. There was always women. There was always women in comics. For those of you who were talking about my diversity and whatever, that you knew people who just got into comic books when they were cool, you know, and you don't know what you're talking about. End of rant. Okay, I'm trying to limit myself to one rant a video. Okay, you see, president and publisher of DC Comics, Jeanette Kahn. There's the proof right there. This is the pudding, and that is the proof. Okay, so story. If you saw my showcase of issue number 1, you already know what's going on, but whatever. So this is Agrivar. These fantasy names are going to be the death of me. He's a paladin, and if you know Dungeons & Dragons, you know a paladin is like a holy knight. So he's like a good guy knight, but he's drinking. Why is he drinking? Because he had his hand shriveled up in the last issue by some sort of humanoid dragon creature. So look, he's got tiny hands, and he can no longer wield his swords. And it's funny because they give his stats in the last issue. He has 18 pre-shriveling, a 3 in strength shriveling. For those of you who are unfamiliar with Dungeons & Dragons, when you make up your character, you take 3 6-sided dice and you roll them. So the highest you can have is an 18, the lowest you can have is a 3. So a 3 strength is terrible. Oh my God, it's terrible. You know, a baby has 3 strength. And he went from like Lou Ferrigno, you know, I'm trying to think who's a big strong guy now. Batista, I don't know. The Rock or Vin Diesel to a baby, an infant, really is okay. So he does what any good paladin does. He becomes a beggar and a drunk, because if he can't be strong, he can't preach, he can't do any of the holy stuff. And this is she's an elf wizard, and there's like a curse about the land. Whenever people cast spells, they slowly transform into like a crystalline substance. Why? Because the evil guy, the evil mastermind, doesn't want other people using magic, which is a kind of clever thing to do. So then he could see who's casting spells by their hands of crystal, and then they can't cast any spells anymore. And then we got the centaur, and this is Vadra, I think her name is. She is an escaped runaway gladiator slave. So she's not a regular slave, she's a gladiator slave. And she fled to the town of Waterdeep because Waterdeep doesn't have slavery, and she became a bouncer. But as we could see in this issue, bounty hunters are after her because she was a thing. So they're drinking water in the desert, and they're like, wow, this nice clean water. And she goes, it's too good to be true. And lo and behold, it was just an illusion for this monster, a dust digger. I've never seen him in Dungeons & Dragons, so I'm assuming this is after me. I played a lot of Dungeons & Dragons. In fact, I still play. But I use Advanced Dungeons & Dragons 2nd edition rules. That's where I stopped. So I dipped out before the 3rd edition and the Edition Wars and Pathfinder and all the new stuff. So, you know, I bought a couple of like monster compendiums just because I liked the fantasy art. And I, like I said, I like to data mine, you know, get ideas. That's another obsessive compulsive thing. Maybe I should show you that. But I also collect role-playing games, and I've been buying just the rules to role-playing games for years for other games, just to data mine them. So there you go, complete lunatic. You know, I got like the Hellboy one, and I just found out that there's a FemForce role-playing game. I got to pick that up, called Super Babes. But anyway, let's look at the credits before I ramble on for another 20 minutes. We got Michael Fleischer. Now, again, I've seen his name around a million times, but his name just in my. Did you ever see Boogie Nights when when what's his Wahlberg says his name is going to be Dirk Diggler, and he goes, and it just that name popped up in purple neon lights. Well, the name Michael Fleischer in my brain popped up in purple neon lights because he wrote that Jonah Hex spectacular that I showcased a couple of days ago. And I really, really like that story. So I'm like, I want to check out something by him. So now I looked through what comics that I owned, and I saw that I have this, and I'm like, oh, I barely remember this, so I'm rereading. So now this guy I'm going to be on the lookout for. Jan Discernment artist. I don't know if it's a man or a woman, but I love the art. It's just good comic book, good solid comic book art, and I've seen the name a million times. Steve Haney, letterer, I don't know. Glenn Whitmore, I don't know that name, and Barbara Kessel, editor. I think Barbara Kessel, she's a writer now, and she's writing a comic book now, and the name is going to escape me. It's driving me crazy. But she's married to a Carl Kessel, who's my third favorite inker. And Barbara Kessel was an editor who became a writer. There's always women in comic books. Look. One publisher, always women in comic books, guys. The Bounty Seekers of Manchaca. That's where she's from. She's from Manchaca. And now we cut to the evil wizard dragon creature. There's a name for the races, and I forget, but he's like a dragonkin or something like that. And he captured Saloon's Eye. Saloon is the goddess of moonlight in this setting. I think it's, I don't know, it's Waterdeep settings. Does that make it Dragonlance? Does that make it Forgotten Realms? For those of you who know more than me, which is probably everybody, clue me in. I kind of forget which exact D&D setting this is. I've never been big on the settings because, like I said, I bought them all, used none, and ripped off all. So Saloon, this is like a gem saloon, and he's trying to make it open up. When it opens up, it's going to give him MacGuffin powers, and then he's going to conquer all. You know, like in every fantasy story. So now they're dealing with this refugee from Empire Strike or Return of the Jedi, and she's fighting. And this I like. Okay, there's two females in this group. There's the elven sorcerer and the gladiator, the female gladiator. There's the dwarven male little guy. His name is Onyx, and there's the male centaur, and none of them are Mary Sue's. They're all equals. And this is the second issue. The last issue was putting the team together. That's like in every Dungeons Dragons and every heist movie. And now that I'm saying it out loud, I'm starting to realize that most Dungeons Dragons stories are heists. So, you know, they put the team together, then they go rob the dungeon for the magic MacGuffin. I never made that connection before. And so nobody's overshadowing anybody else. I really like that. There's no Mary Sue's, and there's no like guy savior. You know what I mean? Everybody so far has been equally incompetent. The elven sorceress can't use her powers. Agravar, the paladin that they were all looking for, the famous Agravar the paladin to save them, and then they see he's a shriveled drunk. So he ain't saving anybody, even though he was, in their mind he was going to be the savior. She, the I don't need no man, female gladiator, as tough as she is, she's asking for help. And lo and behold, we got this freaky little dwarf guy who pops up, and he says, "This is my guard. What are you guys doing here?" He's wary because of these dragon and serpent people patrols. So he sees that they're mammals and calls off the attack. And they're saying they're looking for him because they heard he has a way to help Agravar's shriveled hands. Cut to the bounty hunters. The bounty hunters are looking for from the female who Vajra, because her owner made a fortune off of her in the arena, and she escaped. And he either wants her back or he wants her punished to discourage other people from escaping. So typical fashion thing. These guys tell them the information they need and then kill them anyway because we're setting up how evil they are. Evil. And they're talking, and this guy, he's being kind of a jerk, but he's just like looking at his hands. He goes, "Listen, I got these gloves, and these gloves have magic powers that like gauntlets of ogre strength." And I like how they're, I was about to say a word and I realized it was a silly word. I like how they use real magic items, meaning magic items from actual Dungeons & Dragons lore. So in the story, so TSR is playing a heavy hand in this. and I'll show you at the end of the comic. So he says, listen, you help me get to the top. There's a basilisk up there guarding an orb. There's always sub quests or side quests. And I'll give you these gloves. And he's like, oh, really? And he's like, yeah. So, because I won't need them anymore. So cut to this introduction of a new character who's not even named yet, but it hits all my buttons. So here he is, a father and a son, and he's about to get eaten by wolves. Now at first I was like, this guy's evil. But it's just, would you make this face if you were worried about getting eaten by wolves? So it's the dark, it's windy, and the wolves are attacking. And look at creepy little kid. Kids are always creepy in comic books. You see a kid in a comic book, you got a 50-50 chance that it's either the savior or the antichrist. There's almost no middle ground. Look at that kid. So, and I don't remember the rest of the story. I only have the first 10 issues, so I got to get the rest. I'm actually enjoying this a lot. So he's like, we're gonna get? We killed the wolves, but we can't see a hand in the face. Light, boom. He's in Waterdeep, and he meets Luna, who runs like an inn. There's always an innkeeper, magical innkeeper. So now he's drinking Agrivar, and they're like, we're disgusted by them. Like this is the paladin. All right. So he doesn't have any hands, but he could still talk. He could still like preach. He could still do his like priestly duty, and they're disgusted with him. And I like that the centaur's got the bleeding heart. He's just like, well, keep your darts sheathed. Agrivar was a valid paladin once, and the gods he will prove himself valiant again. And So Joab is the name of the little dwarf. So everybody's like, she was the one who was preaching how Agrivar will help them because her sister got captured by the dragon prince at the beginning when he stole the Eye of Saloon, and so her twin sister, she needs her twin sister. Every comic book trope, every Dungeons Dragons trope is a fantasy trope is being employed in the story. And you know what? I like it. It works. And let's talk to Porky Pig. Let's call Porky Pig. All right, so that's Needle Rock. So they're going to go up on top of Needle Rock. He's drunk and staggering, and she's just like, listen, I believe that you were great once and you'll be great again. And he's just like, why don't you leave me alone? I'm a drunk. He's ashamed of himself. He's ashamed of himself. And here's a funny thing. It's been, 6 years since his hands got drilled? He's still wearing his paladin armor. In Dungeons & Dragons, when we were playing, mostly as kids, we just put on our armor and never thought of it again. Like, how uncomfortable would that be to wear, I wear my same clothes for 2 or 3 days in a row. I'm disgusted with myself. I feel like a bum, and I feel dirty and smelly. Just imagine this guy's wearing his chainmail armor for 6 years. Granted, it's a fantasy world, and you don't bathe much anyway, so that would make it even worse. But whatever. So he's this smelly, drunken, besotted bum of an ex-paladin, and he's like, "Be gone from me," whatever. And she's just like, "Whatever." He goes, I still believe in him. She's like, I only believe in steel and a strong right hand. So now they're going to go up the Needle Rock, and boom, what happens? The undead awakens. So there they go. We got the undead coming out of the ground. And, it's Dungeons & Dragons. You got to have the undead. So they're fighting off the undead. This, to me, is one of the only things that doesn't work. He wields a double sword, so it's a sword on both sides. I don't know. Anybody know more about weapons than me? Really, my only knowledge of weapons. Well, I have a history degree, but that's not the same as studying weapons. So I know what weapons were used, but I don't. I'm rambling, but you know what I mean. I don't know enough about it. Is this a viable weapon? A sword? I know Darth Maul uses it in the Empire Strikes Back or whatever silly Star Wars movies, but there's no weight, there's no balance because it's a laser or whatever. Right, so they're fighting, and I'm rambling about something that doesn't matter. So here comes bounty hunters. It looks like we got a Roman, we got I don't know which fantasy race, and this looks like Conan or like a Byzantine. They're all coming, and then he's just panicking. He's like, this thing is going to kill me. And the sword comes down and kills it. And who was it? Vajra. She's like, I only did it because the girl elf has a respect for you, and I also don't want to see anybody die. So you better start up pulling your own weight here, I can't be saving you all the time. And he's just like, look at how pathetic this poor guy is. And now they're climbing up to the top of the Needle Rock. And we got Catwoman. this was an interesting series. It's kind of, yeah, Mindy Newell, J.J. Birch, Michael Byer. This kind of memory hold, but this kind of set up, if you ask me, the portrayal of a why can't I think of her name in the newest Catwoman with the guy from Twilight? Why can't I think of the woman's name? But this is the portrayal that I think was used as a template for the new model with the oh, why can't I think of her name? But you know who I'm talking about. The new Batman movie with the vampire guy. Anyway, so they make it to the top, and there's the basilisk. Now, this is a mistake. This is supposed to be a stone statue. The last person to go up this building used a reflection on the basilisk, and it turned to stone, but the colorist messed up. So then that's scared of it. He's like, yes, listen, here you go. Here's your gauntlets. I don't need him anymore. So he didn't cure him of the shrivel magic, but he's got the gauntlets of ogre strength on, and, you know, so that's the next best thing. And then they find this goofy little MacGuffin device, and he uses it to free him. He is not really a dwarf or a gnome or whatever people call him. And he doesn't correct anybody. He's like, it's not my true form. I don't care what you call me. It's not real. He's a fire elemental trapped in this form. So he's like, listen, I could use this magic MacGuffin device. Restores your true form. He's like, you could restore my true form. He's like, yeah, it only works once every 200 years. Da-da-da-da-da-da. And it also, by the way, it also frees the basilisk. So now the basilisk is free again. And remember, everybody who's a Harry Potter fan knows that the basilisk, if you stare into the basilisk, you turn to stone. So a basilisk literally means little king. So it's supposed to be like a tuft lizard. Not tough, like strong, like tuft, like it has a mane. So it looks like that, what is that little lizard that you see in Japan that runs around and it has like the thing? So it's supposed to be the little king. So it has like a crown and a mane according to the mythology. And so nobody ever portrays it right. Not in Harry Potter. It's not a giant snake. It's a little lizard, and it gets to exist because it stares at you and turns you to stone. But this you'll see is a greater basilisk. And here we have Legion 89. I showcased this. I showcased an issue of that. And now they're fighting this thing, and he's just like, oh, what? You know, he's been a drunk, and he's still drunk right now. And the basilisk they're all scared of it. So, you know, wouldn't you be? What do I do? What can I do? What can I do? So she gets the bright idea. She's like, if only I thought to bring a mirror, or as they saw, a reflecting glass. So she's like, this reflects. So she throws it and it hits it, and it turns to look at what it was, and it turns to stone. Quick think. I thought that was pretty clever. So now they're riding away, and he's just like, you know, I got the gauntlets. I'm not going to drink anymore, but I'm still useless. And he basically, I can't look at you guys in the face. You know, I'm ashamed of myself. So he leaves, and they're like, yeah, good thing we wasted all this time getting him into fighting shape just to leave us. And they get attacked by the bounty hunters. So they're talking about, you know, she'll get a good, if she's not damaged, they'll get a good reward. What about these? He's like, there's no money on these. We'll just play with them and kill them. And he's just like, I can't let this happen. So the next issue is the redemption of Agrabah. And here's what I like. Advanced Dungeons & Dragons comics. So here we got, you know, the TSR info. So this is the stats on the monster. The greater basilisk. You know, frequency, very rare. Number appearing 2. Move, they can move 6 inches. Now, big deal, 6 inches. Well, Dungeons & Dragons was originally supposed to be played on, you put out a piece of paper, why can't I think of with boxes, graph paper. In each box, originally was supposed to be an inch box, and each inch represents 5 feet. So on every turn, they can move 5 feet times 6, 30 feet. Okay, 6 inches. So each inch box, you know, and then that they just changed that. And I don't know, does anybody still play Dungeons & Dragons? First off, does anybody still play Dungeons & Dragons? Second off, does anybody use the graph paper? I've never used graph paper. I've never used it. I've always played more theater of the mind. That because to me, if you play Dungeons & Dragons with graph paper and the miniature, then you play a tactical miniatures game. And then I would rather play a tactical miniatures game, like say like Warhammer or something, you know. But I like more theater role play of Dungeons & Dragons than say the tactical fighting of Dungeons & Dragons. All right, treasure type. There's a chart, number of attacks. So it has 3 attacks: 1d6, 1d6, 2d6. So claw, bite. That's usually, you know. So it's swipe with the claw, and then a bite. And then special defenses, whatever, evil. The hit dice. What does it say? Hit dice, 10. So hit dice is like the level of monsters. And what you do is you take an 8-sided dice and you roll it 10 times, and that'll give you a hit point. So it's going to have between 10. So it's going to have between 10 and 80 hit points. Not bad. And then this explains all its extra powers. Here we have Vajra Valley Majar. Strength 1823. that if you have an 18 strength and you're a fighter, you could also have like a percentile score. And that just to me showed like that Dungeons & Dragons was made up as they went along. They didn't really think of it long term, and this was like a little patch to fix it that just made it more complicated. All of her armor, Thaco, 2-hit armor class 0. Magic items. This is the little stone that he used to free himself. And here's an editorial from TSR themselves. And there you go. That's the comics. Here's an ad for the New Gods. Mark Cavanier, Bob Smith, Jim Starlin, Paris Cole. Look at that. I have this series. I got to dig this out because these are just all-stars. And Invasion Aftermath. Invasion, I hated it. Invasion was like, to me, the beginning of event fatigue. Events, if you in comic books, they used to do it every summer. Now they seem to be doing it every couple of months. Like a world-changing event that affects every comic book. Enough is enough. Save it for what it merit. Because the Crisis on Infinite Earths was a big deal, and the Secret Wars were a big deal. It doesn't mean that every idea that an editor has is a big deal. But anyway, there you go. So this is Advanced Dungeons & Dragons. So let's talk about this. Let's talk about Dungeons & Dragons. The comment section is so much fun. It's what right now I finally got what I envisioned to get when I started this channel. Like some nice conversation with friendly, knowledgeable people about hobbies that I love. I love comic books. I love Dungeons & Dragons. I love board games. I'm a nerd. What do you want me to say? So let's talk about all that stuff. And this comic book is all of that. It's board games. It's tactical miniatures games. It's Dungeons & Dragons. It's role playing. It's comic books, and all my hobbies rolled up into the. I'm amazed now as a kid that I wasn't into sword and sorcery comic books. I got this because I was playing a lot of Dungeons & Dragons. But again, I was saying to my wife last night that as a kid, comic books were for superheroes. I don't know. Just like, you want to hear something weird? Board games weren't for superheroes. I actively avoided any board games by Marvel or DC up until like 3 years ago because board games were not superheroes. Because comic books did superheroes really well. Board games did fantasy and tactical miniatures, stuff like that really well. But it never did superheroes really well. And now they're starting to do superheroes really well. The worlds are colliding, guys. Either that or I'm no longer as... I hate this term because I'm not OCD, but I'm not as compulsive as I used to be. All right. So thanks a lot. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Request videos. I haven't had a request for a video in a while. I've been doing a lot of back issue bonanzas because I've been spending way too much money on comic books, but that's on me. But request some videos, guys. Some comics. All right. I'll see you guys tomorrow. And if I don't, Happy New Year. I've been saying that I wanted to take a couple of days off, but I don't know. I'm still reading comic books and I still got the urge to talk about them. All right, so I'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.